So the Tao and the Pearl. I want to back up just a little bit now and refer to the Tao, the Chinese system, because it fills in some very important blanks about the Pearl. I mentioned them earlier in our introduction, but now we're gonna look at it a little bit more directly. The way we're going to enter into this conversation about the Tao is by talking about the Yellow Emperor, who's considered one of the sons of heaven. On Ancient Aliens, we actually did an episode about the Yellow Emperor, and we talked about him a number of times because the mythology of the Yellow Emperor tells us that he is, as a son of heaven, has extraterrestrial connections. And when the ancient Chinese would talk about the dragon emerging from the clouds, they made it very clear, at least very clearly sounded like they're talking about some kind of an extraterrestrial craft of some kind that brought the sons of heavens to Earth. Now, there are two schools of thought about this. One is that the craft is some sort of a technology, like something NASA would create, like a warp craft or something like that, or it is a spiritual craft, a craft of light through which these beings travel that is symbolized by the dragon. I, of course, am more in the camp that this craft is a craft of light, similar to the Merkaba that is being discussed here. And so that's going to be my point of view as we start to look at the Tao and its connection to the Pearl. What the Tibetans are describing when they talk about the rainbow light body, what Christianity is talking about with the glory body and resurrection body of Christ, what all these traditions that speak of the ascension body are talking about are actually the normal functioning of our souls. We take off our true power or diminish our true power when we enter into the human realm, but we have the ability to reawaken and tap back into that power. And that is in part what the process of ascension is about. So these ascended abilities, the point is that's the normal abilities of the celestial beings, the sons of heaven. They can phase between a mud body and a light body. The mud body is our flesh and blood body, the body made of clay or mud or DNA, and that has enfolded within it the ability to morph into the light body. This inner alchemy of phasing, of transmuting the mud body into the light body, was taught in Egypt at Saqqara in 2500 BC. The sons of Ptah were taught how to transmute their body into plasma. The pyramid texts, which are written underneath in the chambers underneath the pyramid of Unas at Saqqara, say phrases like, the Pharaoh scaled the ladder to heaven. The Pharaoh turned himself into lightning. The Pharaoh is living amongst the gods. When they describe the Pharaoh as being like lightning, that's plasma. That's describing his morphing from one state of matter into another state of matter, from a flesh and blood body into a celestial body. These teachings were simultaneously taught in China, where the Yellow Emperor, Wang Ti, was the supposed founder of Taoist internal alchemy. And so it's quite incredible that at the same time as these teachings are being elucidated in Egypt, they're simultaneously being taught in China. Inquiring of the Tao at the Cave of Paradise is the name of the scroll that we're looking at here. It's in the Palace Museum in Beijing. And it's based on the story that the Yellow Emperor went out into the mountains to meet with the famous Taoist sage. And as he goes out there, according to the legend, the Yellow Emperor attained immortality and rose to heaven, leaving behind only his clothing and cap to be entombed. Now, that sounds like a full body transmutation, a dematerialization. In the rainbow light body tradition, they tell us that once we attain the rainbow light body, the physical flesh and blood body dissolves into 5-colored rainbow light, leaving behind only hair, toe, and fingernails, which have no nerves to be transmuted. Here, they're not telling us that there were hair, toe, and fingernails, merely a cap and clothing. But if we fill in the blanks, we get a sense that this is what is being described here. As I noted, the Yellow Emperor was a son of heaven. What that means is that he's a celestial being. And he also had a dragon used to ascend to the sun. One ancient writing mentioned that this marvelous means of transportation originates in the land where suns are born and is very old, over 3,000 years. Well, where is the land where the suns are born, but in outer space? We're talking about the Yellow Emperor traveling upon his son, or a dragon, that could take him into the celestial realms. And the biographies of Wang Ti state that this dragon, Changwan, covers myriads of miles in a day, and that the human who rides it can reach an age of 2,000 years. So obviously there's some kind of internal alchemy which is going on here, which is what the Tao is all about. And Wang Ti, with the pearl here on his cap, is the exemplar of this teaching. And what we notice here is that we have 2 dragons that are chasing a flaming pearl just above him. Now, we talked about this earlier in the context of the hymn of the pearl, where Thomas is sent to Egypt to get the pearl that's guarded by a dragon. This is the symbolic motif that occurs over and over as concerns these mysteries. And here now we see Wang Ti, or the Yellow Emperor, with that same dragon on his chest chasing the flaming pearl. This is the eternal quest. This is the eternal dynamic. And what does the dragon symbolize? As well, on one level, the dragon symbolizes earth energies. It symbolizes an opposing force. It symbolizes, certainly in Chinese mythology, the dragon upon which the sons of heaven ride into the place where the sons are born. So the way I read this is that this dragon symbolizes the craft that we ascend upon. And in order to ascend, we've got to get that pearl. We've got to awaken the pearl. So for a while, I've just been enamored by these Chinese depictions of the golden dragon with the blue pearl, for example, that we see here. My wife, Claire, and I spend a lot of time in London, and the Victoria and Albert Museum has some wonderful examples of this dragon and pearl motif. And it's there on one of the placards. It says that dragons are often portrayed chasing after a luminous pearl. And there are traces of the importance of the sacred pearl of wisdom in early Taoism. But it's best preserved in Buddhism as the jewel in the lotus. Oh, okay. So this is the Chintamani stone. This is the wish-fulfilling gem that the dragon is pursuing. And as we've, excuse me, as we've explained, that wish-fulfilling gem is the pearl. It's this extraterrestrial stone that represents a state of consciousness, and it also represents a state of matter. And as we also learn in the Chinese system, the dragons symbolize the creative energies which are compressed within the pearl, within the Chintamani, and from it generates the cosmos. Well, this is exactly the same meaning as Christ in the Salvator Mundi painting, holding that Chintamani pearl or stone. It represents the powers of the universe that these avatars have the ability to wield. And this is what the Yellow Emperor is suggested as having possessed as well, as this power to ascend into the stars, to live for thousands of years, and so forth. So when we see, as we're looking at the back of a mirror now, we see the dragon chasing the pearl here, we understand that this has something to do with the awakening of these latent potentials within us, this power of the universe within us. And what I want to do now is we're going to connect it with the rainbow light body. And we're going to start to do that with this tanka here that I first saw in the LA County Museum of Art. This is the white Tara. And at the time that I first saw this, must have been 10 years ago, I was attracted to her rainbow breeches. I thought, oh, cool. Look at, there's the white Tara wearing rainbow breeches. That means she's in her rainbow light body. And here she is, she's sitting on her throne, her lotus throne. And you notice the red sash that is draped around her shoulders. That's what initially captured my attention. But now look at the very base of the tanka and look along the sides of the tanka. And what we see is the dragon chasing the luminous pearl. And I just find that that's very intriguing because it links the concept of the dragon chasing the pearl with the rainbow light body. And that's what all of this is ultimately aiming us at, is recognition of this aspect of ourselves that can be awakened as we awaken the pearl within us. So here is the detail of white Tara wearing the rainbow breeches. And later, I learned something really profound about the red sash that she has wrapped around her. And I was very intrigued by that. Giuseppe Tucci is an Italian researcher who wrote that some shamanistic groups believe that their sorcerers can ride rainbows and ascend to the heavens. They use red and blue ribbons to symbolize rainbows. Some scholars hold that the red and yellow silk ribbons that hang on the frames of the tanka icons are reflections of this idea, the ribbons standing for the rainbow on which the sorcerers ride. So I get it. What Giuseppe Tucci is saying is that when they place this red ribbon, or sash, as I'm calling it, around the shoulders of white Tara or other figures, it actually is a shorthand way for the artist to say she's riding on a rainbow. And as she is enfolded within a rainbow, it makes perfect sense that that's what is being communicated here, is that she is riding into the celestial realms on a rainbow or in a rainbow orb. That is the rainbow light body that's being described. Remember in our introduction, I showed you this image here of the baby soul looking back up at Kuan Yin. And I noted the red umbilical cord that's wrapped around the baby's body. Well, now we have to look at it from a different perspective. Yes, it represents an umbilical cord, but can it also represent a shorthand way of representing the rainbow light body? Tucci says again that Tibetan history holds that the first generation of Tibetan kings descended from the heavens to the sacred mountains. And in his book, Religions of Tibet, he tells how they descended upon these mountains from heaven through rope-like structures called the divine cord. This heavenly rope is closely connected to the rainbow, suggesting that these cords are rainbow-like. The summit of sacred mountains were the places of contact between heaven and earth, and after their time on earth was up, they returned back to heaven in a similar fashion, riding upon the rainbow. So one way to read this, or the way I'm reading this, is that this red cord, this red sash wrapped around the baby symbolizes the rainbow light body. And as it's a child that is portrayed here, does that mean then that the rainbow light body is already enfolded within us? How does the soul get here when it leaves its point of origin and departs, and then its next stop is the mother's womb, the vessel in the mother's womb? How exactly does that soul travel? This is saying it travels on a rainbow or a rainbow orb, and that is the robe of the soul. Well, that's what the Hymn of the Pearl says too. This robe, this rainbow robe, is the robe of the soul. And once we take on physical earthly incarnation, we forget that is enfolded within us, that is part of our soul. And so then what we're challenged with doing as spiritually minded people on the path of ascension is remembering this robe. Remember the pearl. Remember that is the message of the hymn of the pearl. Remember the pearl. And once you remember the pearl, you go get it from the dragon. And then this becomes your way of returning to our original source place, the kingdom of heaven or the pure land, where we once again reclaim our original robe of glory. So in Buddhist art, it's very clear that they're talking about those same concepts. And in Buddhist art and culture, they share this jewel in the lotus mythology, the divine pearl, the wish-fulfilling gem, and the jewel that grants all desires. That is the Chintamani stone there, the Chintamani. And so here we see, once again, this crossover between the Buddhist and the Jewish mystical tradition. As I was saying, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London has some wonderful exhibits that feature the dragon and pearl motif. And the best exhibits, in my view, and the ones that I'm really enamored by, are these robes. The robes of these Chinese princes that have the dragon and pearl motif on it, along with energy or energetic type qualities that, to me, suggest that what they're portraying is actually the rainbow light body. Here's where I'm getting this, and there's the pearl. But when we look down at the fringe of these coats, look at what you see. You see this kind of wavy, rainbow-like energy. Could that be symbolic of the rainbow light body? That's the way I read it. That's what I'm perceiving as I'm standing in front of these robes and meditating on what we're looking at here. What must have been like to wear a garment like this? And wouldn't you like to have one now to just kind of hang out around the house in and have it be a storybook literally on your body that's telling about this quest for the pearl? Here's one of the placards in the V&A that talks about these robes. It says, the emperor was believed to be the son of heaven. Well, that's just like the yellow emperor, Wang Ti, the son of heaven. He's not from earth. He's a celestial being. He's a son of heaven. He had two main duties, one towards heaven and one towards people on earth. He had to integrate the power of the cosmos with his earthly authority. And to do this, he performed many rituals. Regular sacrifices were made at important altars in Beijing, including those of heaven, earth, sun, and moon. And the vessels used in these altars were identified by color. So when he puts this robe on, he's getting ready to engage in ritual in which he unites heaven and earth, where he's drawing down the powers of heaven, symbolized by the pearl and also by the dragon, uniting them within himself, and then doing ritual that ultimately then brings prosperity to his people. And once again, as we look at the robe, we can see what I'm describing is this sort of rainbow light body motif, the wavy, multicolored lines on the bottom of the fringe part could be water, but it also could be frequency or vibration emanating from his body as he's wearing this robe. So I just find these just utterly fascinating and really powerful. Obviously, they're tremendous works of art as well. And you could walk by them and appreciate them and say, wow, that's magnificent what they're able to create there. But then when you layer into it the actual meaning of the dragon and the pearl and the potential connection with the rainbow light body, they take on even more profound significance. So the lower border is covered with diagonal lines, or standing water is the way it's referred to, culminating in sea waves on which symbolic objects are floating. The collar and sleeves are enriched by narrow bands of embroidery with dragons on the dark blue ground. That's what the placard says at the V&A, but that's not a very metaphysical description of what we're seeing here. And as I'm suggesting, I think it goes a lot deeper than it's just simply representing water. I think it represents the cosmic sea in which the dragon dwells, where the pearl is found. And ultimately, once we find the pearl and harmonize the dragon, we return to our glorious multicolored or rainbow light body. So another beautiful example of these types of robes.